Well, if a patient has a procedure, of course, there's a necessity, an obligation to provide informed consent, and the patient has to be informed about the risks that are associated with a procedure, and they need to decide if they're willing to accept those risks. But what risks do we discuss? If you think about the risk of something happening, or the possibility of something happening, imagine if every time you got into a taxi, you had to sign a document that said, we could be hit by a truck, we could be hit by a bird, we could fall into a pothole, we could fall into a sinkhole, we could be carjacked, you could catch an infection from the car seat or the door handle. Oh, I may overcharge you. Someone may hack into the system and I may overcharge you and not realize it. And on and on and on, right? So there's an infinite number of ways that things could happen and could go wrong. If we did that to every anxious patient, or to a parent, or to another loved one who's caring for someone who's undergoing a procedure, they couldn't make a useful or rational decision about the real risks, those that are more likely, those that might be more life-threatening or cosmetic, those that would really influence their decision. So there is some judgment that comes into play about what to discuss and what not to discuss, knowing the patient, knowing their needs, and knowing what they have to undergo. So I think it's too early to really say for sure. However, I can imagine a day when a patient will need a procedure of some kind, perhaps from an implantable device, or perhaps a treatment with a high energy with radiation for cancer, where perhaps in the news just that week or the day before, there was news of a cyber attack or vulnerability, and there's a real issue that perhaps things are being affected. And I imagine when that day comes, and if it's real, that will have to be part of the conversation. Like, do you want to put off the procedure because something just happened, and maybe the batch of pacemakers that are being implanted this month might be vulnerable? Maybe we should hold off. I can imagine that being very relevant to that patient at that time. And that is the case always with informed consent. It has to be relevant to the patient at that time. So at this point, there are too many theoretical considerations, and we would just drive people crazy and scare them unnecessarily, and we couldn't quantify any of these things either. So they say, well, okay, gee, that's a concern, I guess. I've been hearing in the newspaper about all these attacks and cyber attacks. What's the likelihood that will happen to me? Oh boy, let's go through. We're probably going to use, 10, 20, 30, 40 medical devices over the next, say 2 days in the hospital. We don't have any data on whether any of them have been hacked. We don't know whether it will pose a risk to you. So we'll do what we always do, which was we'll have people monitoring you, visiting you, and assessing you. And if we're concerned about something, if the device isn't working correctly, we will address it, whether or not there's an insulation problem, whether or not there's another malfunction, or whether it's a cyber-related attack. It makes no difference. Either way, we're responsible for being vigilant and doing our best to deliver care. So time will tell.